9-year-old Rebecca and Tommy's unconditional love begins on a desolate beach. Years later, the enamored woman struggles to sustain her perished love with the help of science. On a rainy day at the beach, little boy Tommy runs up and introduces himself to Rebecca, who silently watches the rain under a wooden boardwalk. When he hears footsteps after him, he charges into the pouring rain, leaving the young girl without a word. After the rain, Rebecca dresses up and hears stones thrown at her window. Outside, she sees Tommy, and they both bike to the beach. Later, Rebecca pretends to fall asleep in her new friend's room. Tommy's father, Ralph, receives a call from the little girl's grandfather and lets her stay the night. The two are ecstatic upon hearing this and continue playing around. The following day, Tommy leads Rebecca to an abandoned boat by the beach and peacefully watches the hazy shore. In Rebecca's house, the two friends observe a tiny snail. Tommy plans to take it to the sea the next day, but Rebecca tells him that she will leave for her mother's place in Japan on the 72nd floor. Then, Rebecca gets up to leave, but Tommy follows her by the door and kisses her. Shocked, the girl hurriedly leaves the room. While taking a bath, Rebecca receives a call from her friend, who is watching the storm on the beach. He lets her know that he'll see her off tomorrow morning at the ferry to show her something, which makes the little girl blush. However, their call ends abruptly due to the bad weather. On the dock the next day, Rebecca looks back, but Tommy is nowhere in sight. Her grandfather sends her off, and the little girl looks at the beach longingly as the ferry leaves. 12 years later, a grown-up Rebecca returns to her late grandfather's unoccupied house in hopes of finding her childhood love. She bikes to Tommy's house and meets his mother, Judith, who informs the young woman that he doesn't live there anymore. Judith recognizes Rebecca and amusingly tells her that her son wanted to go after her to Tokyo, as he also longed for his childhood sweetheart. Tommy's mother then points the young woman to the harbor by the embankment where her son currently lives. Then, Rebecca finds an isolated house at the harbor. Just as Judith said, she silently creeps in upon hearing no response while the dog watches her. Inside, she sees a young woman who is reading a book on the bed. Suddenly, a young man walks in and asks who the stranger is. Rebecca only smiles at him while Tommy remembers her through their shared silence. Now aware of Rebecca's presence, the woman on the bed introduces herself as Rose, Tommy's current date. Shortly after, the childhood friends easily rekindle their relationship. Rebecca has graduated and now designs software for sonar devices, which detects cracks in underground tanks. Tommy ponders on how his dog seems to be fond of Rebecca for letting her in. Jealous, Rose gets up and leaves. Rebecca feels the awkwardness of visiting her old crush and leaves as well. The next day, Rebecca sees Tommy have fun in the rain, so they both head down to the beach. Tommy reveals that Rose is not his girlfriend while unclothing before his childhood crush. He runs to the sea and plays with the waves as Rebecca watches him. That evening, the two friends have dinner at Rebecca's home, which her grandfather left when he died. Then, the young woman recounts the days when Tommy didn't show up before she departed for Japan. She asked about what he wanted to show her that day, which Tommy anticipated her to ask. Tommy takes a matchbox from his pocket and gives it to Rebecca. Inside is a snail's empty shell from the one they caught 12 years ago. He wanted his friend to have it and take it to Japan. However, the young boy overslept that day, so he took care of the snail for a year until it died. That night, the two childhood friends express their love for each other. Tommy kisses Rebecca, who reciprocates for a while but stops when she feels their attraction toward one another is unusual. The following morning, the two chase each other at the beach. While lying on the sand, Tommy tells Rebecca he'll be away for 2 days. His friend insists on tagging along, but Tommy says it's too dangerous. In Tommy's house, he reveals that he plans to infiltrate a biotechnology corporation behind the name Sparkling Park, which is built on a reclaimed wetland and houses animal cloning. He is a member of an environmental activist group called Pollen Group. They plan to cause as much chaos to expose the establishment's ill operations. Then, Tommy shows Rebecca a storage container filled with cockroaches, which will be released to the crowd and spoil the institution's launch. Bewildered by hearing the man's scheme, Rebecca joins him. That weekend, Tommy hurriedly loads his parents' car with stuff needed for his plan. He bids them goodbye and the couple drive away. On the road, Rebecca grins at the thought of Tommy, the cockroach breeder's grand plan. During the long ride, the young woman asks to stop the car in the middle of the field to relieve herself. Rebecca exits the car and walks farther, and Tommy hops out to follow her. Suddenly, Rebecca hears a loud car crash where another vehicle, unfortunately, hits her beloved friend. Disoriented, the young woman slowly returns inside the car and stares dumbfoundedly at Tommy's lifeless body while she silently fights back her tears. Alone in her room, Rebecca opens the matchbox Tommy gave her and finds a folded note inside. In young Tommy's handwriting, he vows to wait for his childhood love as she goes away. She views her friend's pictures on her laptop, including a video of him smiling amidst the commotion during his previous protests, leaving Rebecca feeling lost further in grief. With sunken eyes, Rebecca visits Tommy's grave, where she seems to devise a plan. Later, she sees Ralph by the sea and offers a shoulder to cry on as the father mourns his only son's death. Soon after, she invites both her late friend's grieving parents for dinner. However, Judith refuses to settle down and asks what the young woman wants to say, so Rebecca leads them to a newly renovated baby's room. Judith glances at the decor on the wall with a sad smile as she approaches the young woman, who she thought is an expecting mother. Rebecca reveals that Tommy could be reborn in the world through her, and Judith looks at her husband, who already knows about the proposition. She shows the baffled mother a consent form from the Department of Genetic Replication, which offers to retrieve the body of the deceased and acquire DNA samples for them to replicate. Despite the grieving family's non-religious beliefs, Judith refuses to disturb the dead and chooses to accept what life has taken from them. However, her husband believes otherwise. The following day, Ralph hands Rebecca the accomplished form and tells her they will move far away from the area. He urges the young woman to remain by the coast since his son has always enjoyed the sea. Before they depart, he reminds Rebecca to think about it more, but the devoted woman has already set her mind. Soon after, Rebecca finishes her clinical procedure at the department, where Rose, who works as a nurse, sees her leave. Months later, a pregnant Rebecca smiles peacefully at the unborn, who flutters inside her swollen womb. Then, she visits Tommy's tomb and happily anticipates his return. Not long after, she gives birth to his clone through a cesarean procedure. 3 months go by, and Rebecca strolls at the beach with Tommy's clone. She passes by mothers with their babies who offer her some pie, but she respectfully declines and returns home in solitude. Over the years, Rebecca takes care of Tommy alone as his mother. One day, the young boy refuses to listen to his mother while he hides under a blanket. Then, Rebecca decides to tell him that his father died in a car accident before he was born, referencing the real and deceased Tommy's life. Tommy's clone, who is a replica of the original Tommy as a young boy, grows close to his mother. At the same time, Rebecca shows an extreme and unusual affection towards her supposed son, whom she loves profoundly. In the woods, Rebecca sees Tommy and his friend Eric looking at a girl, Dima, and her rabbit. The boys eye Dima suspiciously while she looks back at Tommy. Then, the girl bids goodbye to Tommy and leaves. Rebecca tries to invite her over, but she politely declines without looking back. Afterward, Tommy asks Eric if he can smell Dima, to which he confirms. Confused, Rebecca learns from her son that clones have a distinct smell due to their skin, which the boys have observed from Dima. Unbeknownst to Tommy, he is also a clone of his mother's beloved. At school, the children's teacher and the other mothers judge Rebecca, who is known to have invited the clone Dima into her home. While Rebecca sees no issue with it, the women claim that the concept of clones is too complex for their children to comprehend, even if it has grown common in the news. The teacher then reveals that the little girl Dima is a clone of her grandmother, which seems disturbing to others. Unbeknownst to these women, Rebecca's child is also a clone of her late beloved. Distraught, Rebecca pretends to agree with their prejudice against clones and leaves. She fetches Tommy, who plays with water balloons with his friends. Later, Rebecca and Tommy gather pine cones on the ground in the woods for the boys' birthday party. On their bike ride home, they pass by the mothers with Rose, who seems to have told them about the truth behind Tommy. Unaware, the mother and son decorate their house to prepare for the party. Later on, no one comes over to their home. Rebecca ensures they receive their invitation but learns that they already know that Tommy is a clone and refuses to let their children come. Rebecca then serves Tommy his cake even without his guests. The boy is oblivious about his real identity and wonders if Dima is to blame for his empty party. Distressed, Tommy embraces his mother while Rebecca breaks down in tears. Soon, the two relocate to an isolated house by the sea to escape discriminating eyes. At the shore, Tommy shows his mother 2 horseshoe crabs that should have been extinct long ago. The presence of the creatures suggests genetic replication has made its way to the revival and conservation of species. In their new home, Rebecca surprises Tommy with a robotic dinosaur. She suggests calling it Bingo, after the original Tommy's former dog, but he names it Boo Boo. On a hazy day, the two sit on a rusty and abandoned boat, the one the late Tommy showed Rebecca. They observe a pair of supposedly extinct bison from afar when their neighbor, a boy named Mark, introduces himself. Thrilled by his new companion, Tommy lets him borrow his binoculars. While Rebecca works on her laptop one night, Tommy asks questions about his supposed father's accident. The woman answers him based on the truth of the real Tommy's Tommy's death. After all these years, Rebecca still feels guilty over the accident since she's the reason they had to stop on the road. On a fine morning, the mother and son chase each other on the swing and ends up with little Tommy pinning his mother down. Out of breath, they stare at each other closely while Rebecca sensually provokes her son, insinuating that her attraction to the boy is not familial. Suddenly, Mark interrupts, which breaks the tension between Tommy and Rebecca. Afterward, the two boys help each other bury Tommy's robotic toy in the sand, like how he buries his confusing emotions toward his own mother. Later that evening, Rebecca somehow finds out and retrieves the broken toy and returns it to Tommy, who just tries to sleep away his mother's unusual behavior. After a couple of years, the clone finally reaches the age when the real Tommy died. Rebecca serves breakfast in Tommy's room, where she finds a young woman, Monica, under his bed sheets. At the dining table, Tommy tells his mother that Monica will stay over for some time while Rebecca smiles and pretends to like his girlfriend. On the swing, Tommy gushes over how unique living things are and continuously shares his love for science with Monica, who finds him immature. The lovers share a kiss, which Rebecca sees from the house. Since Monica arrived, Rebecca has been miserable and sulks in her home from jealousy. One day, she pretends to read when the pair enters her room and offers a pie Monica baked. Rebecca looks quite unwell and puts it aside. Over the winter, Rebecca's spite for Monica continues. While Monica jogs outside, Tommy sleeps in the cold in his room. Rebecca covers Tommy's torso with a blanket and sneaks beside her son. He snuggles to her unknowingly but gets up when he finds his mother beside him, who remains lying under the sheets. Suddenly, Monica enters the room and starts kissing her boyfriend while Rebecca unmovingly watches from beneath the covers. Tommy doesn't want to expose his mother, so he finds an excuse and leads Monica to the bathroom. One day, the couple returns home from fooling around with a fishnet. Tommy spots his mother sitting on the patio and catches her with a net. He showers her with kisses and suddenly goes under her shirt. Rebecca doesn't stop him, while Monica sees and hurriedly enters the house. The mother and son stare at each other with the sexual tension between them. Eventually, Tommy steps away and follows his girlfriend inside. That night, Rebecca sits awake and listens to a heated moment from the couple in the next room. Tommy stops and audibly whispers that his mother might have woken up. Rebecca leaves the house and returns with a bag while her son pretends to work on his laptop. That early morning, Rebecca silently gazes outside the window. Monica awkwardly tries to talk to her, but Rebecca just looks at her in bewilderment. After a swim, Tommy meets an old woman standing on their patio. Judith, the original Tommy's mother, stares at the young man before her in sorrow. She flinches when Tommy approaches her and asks who she is. However, Judith remains silent while the man looks at her in confusion. On the other hand, Rebecca stands nervously at the unexpected visit of the old woman. Then, Judith walks away while Rebecca enters the house and refuses to answer Tommy's questions. That night, Tommy lies beside his mother in bed and asks about the old woman. Rebecca remains silent and slowly caresses her son. Abruptly, Tommy gets up when he hears Monica call him. The following day at breakfast, Tommy furiously taps the salt shaker on the table repeatedly. Monica witnesses her boyfriend go hysterical when he throws things on the ground and grabs a fistful of salt before pouring it into his food. Suddenly, he slams the table and points at Rebecca. Tommy reveals that he remembers the old woman and storms outside. Later on, Monica calls out to her boyfriend, who locks himself in the bathroom, but he doesn't let her in. Soon after, Tommy finally exits the bathroom and sees Monica with her bag. He looks at his mother, who lies sulking on her bed, and his girlfriend understands who he chooses and quickly leaves. A few moments later, Rebecca gets up and hands Tommy her old laptop, which contains all of the original Tommy's memories. Afterward, Tommy grabs Rebecca by the neck and throws her on the bed. The young man is stunned by the dreadful revelation that he's a clone of his mother's late beloved. He lashes out at Rebecca and repeatedly asks who she is. Despite answering, she provokes his son and kisses him, which eventually leads to an intimate exchange. Rebecca bleeds, which insinuates that she's a virgin until that moment. In the end, Rebecca smiles as she achieves what she has desired for so long. Later that day, Tommy grabs his bags and bids one last farewell by calling the woman who brought him to the world by her name. Soon, Rebecca finds herself happily pregnant with her beloved's clone, alone in the isolated house by the beach where it all began.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.